Dear student, today we discuss the service model in detail, and first we will discuss the infrastructure as a service. As I told earlier, the capability provided to the consumer is to provide processing, storage and network and other fundamental computing resources, whereas the consumer is able to deploy and run the arbitrary software which can include the operating system and application. The consumer do not care about the control of the infrastructure but have the control over operating system, storage and deployed application. Possible examples are Amazon E2C, Microsoft Azure, OpenNebula are the example of infrastructure where the cloud user can run infrastructure as a service. The system architecture is divided into two parts, the resource management interface and system monitoring interface, and the middle layer is a virtualization layer. We can virtualize the resources of computing systems, network system and infra and storage system. There are three basic type of cloud services. Enabling technique, virtualization. When compared with the traditional stack, the virtualized stack, there is a hypervisor between the every VMs and the physical layer, hardware layer. वर्चुअलाइजेशन का कंसेप्ट ये है कि हम एक एब्स्ट्रैक्शन क्रिएट कर लेते हैं लॉजिकल रिसोर्सेज. वो जो एब्स्ट्रैक्शन है वो बिल्कुल वैसे ही काम करता है जैसे हमारा एक्चुअल रिसोर्स होता है. In a virtualized stack, you can see there are three different virtual machines are hosted in one hypervisor. A hypervisor can run a multiple machine using the hardware virtualization. The next upcoming technique nowadays are using is container management. What is the difference between a virtual machines and a container? Virtual machine, we can say that the virtual machine are multiple operating system based on hardware which are emulated by a hypervisor, while the container are an application level construct and emulate different virtual environment which share a single kernel. When we talk about system performance of a container is very good. When we talk about the lightweight, the virtual machines are traditionally can take up a lot of disk space, while containers are relatively light. Maintenance and update are easy in container and difficult in virtual machines. Next, infrastructure properties supported by virtual techniques. There are three properties: manageability and interoperability, availability and reliability, and scalability and elasticity, which are supported by infrastructure as a service. When we talk about our resource management interface, we talk about this resource management in terms of virtual machines, in terms of virtual storage, and in terms of virtual network. In virtual machines, we should able to provide a basic infrastructure operation like creation of virtual machine, suspension of virtual machine, resumption and termination. What we talk about virtual storage, we such need space allocation, space release, data writing and data reading. In talk about while virtual network, IP allocation, domain name registration, connection establishment and batch with provisioning are the basic example of the resource management interface. There are, as we said earlier, there are three type of resources: computing, storage and network. then we utilize the same resources in terms of VMs, storage, and virtual networks. When we talk about system monitoring, yes, monitoring is monitoring for virtual machines like CPU loading, memory utilization, IO loading, and internal network loading are example of virtual machine system monitoring. When we talk about a virtual storage monitoring like space allocation, data duplication, and data storage assess bandwidth. And when we talk about virtual network is what are the bandwidth of virtual network connectivity, and network loadings. All the such monitoring we can do like a Google account. You can use how many storage you have utilized and how many are free. What the loading time, CPU loading time, memory utilization. When we talk about system performance, you can monitor these things. When nowadays you are using a mobile data of your network, then all the bandwidth, connectivity, and network loading all display on your. You can monitor how many you use the resources. Here the summary of us in virtualization. We discuss the service virtualization, storage virtualization, and network virtualization. Now discuss the resource management and resource monitoring interface. When we talk about a platform as a service, the capability provided to a user to deploy cloud infrastructure. Consumer create and acquire application created using programming language, tool, and supported by a provider. The many toolkits, compiler, interpreter, all the programming level tools are discussed in a platform as a service. Consumer do not need about the control underlying the infrastructure, including network, service, operating system. A cloud user come and write your application, can test your application, and deploy your application. Possibly application holding environment configuration. Examples are Microsoft Azure, Google App Engine, Hadoop are example of platform as a service. The system architecture of platform as a service, you can see that at lower level, as basic level, there are computing resources, network resources, and storage resources. In the middle layer, what the runtime requirement? Runtime requirement are the, you can see there are the properties they have already discussed: scalability, elasticity, availability and reliability, performance optimization, manageability, and interoperability. These are the runtime property the user can demand. Here the upper level, you can see there are programming IDE. For example, you are going to write a program in Python, then you need a Python IDE, their programming API, development tools, the system control interface, what are the policy base, and what are the flow of the platform as a service. The enabling tech links. Runtime environment refer to a collection of software services availability, program library, common properties, manageability and interoperability, performance and optimization, availability and reliability, scalability and elasticity. User user make a programming to develop their own services in past, like their full functionality which supported from the underlying runtime environment tool like a profiler, debugger, test environment, computation, storage, and communication operator are also required in a pass. When we talk about a system control interface, the policy base and workflow. Typically, the principle: what are the your policy to change a password of a system? what the workflow, how the installation and configuration of a resource can be done. These are discussed in workflow control. Here the summary of a pass. Runtime environment, need a runtime environment, programming API, development toolkit, debugger, profiler, and what are the system controls. Here at last, the software as a service. Software, you can, there are many specific or customized software we are using as a cloud, as a software as a service, like Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sites, Salesforce, iOS. These are the example of software as a service. Mm, you can see the end user are using their different platform like mobile, tablet, laptops, servers, are they connected through a web application or a web portals. The general application, business application, such type of application, all the applications you develop are lie in a software as a service. The enabling technique, how we can use software as service. We can use software as service through a web service or a web portal. The general application like Office Suite, multimedia, instance messaging are the example of a general application of software as services. Business, CRM, ERP, marketing, trading are the example of a business applications. Scientific aeroplane simulation, biochemistry simulation are example of scientific application. Government application like national medical center and public transport system are the example of a government level application. All these applications all can run through a web portal. You can use Google, Yahoo, NetWise, MSNBC, and you can access these cloud services. Here is summary of software as a service, enabling technique, web services, web-based applications, and web portals. Thank you.